Hello and welcome back to another one of our Sunday Gospel reading reflections. Um, my name is Brendan. I am the youth minister at St. John's. In case you don't know that, you probably do. But this week we are looking at the Gospel reading for the 8th Sunday of Ordinary Time. And what's really interesting is this is going to be the final Sunday of Ordinary Time for a while because the Sunday after this is going to be the first Sunday of Lent. So we are already a week before Lent, but we are still in ordinary time, and we got a really great gospel reading from the Gospel of Luke. Jesus continues some discourse for us to really reflect on here, and I took some time to reflect on this, and this is just such a great gospel. I love it, and I hope that you can take some from it too. Encouraged to read it. It's from Luke chapter 6, verses 39 to 45. You can find it whether it's in the Sunday Missal, like I'm reading from here, or you can find it online, or just turn to the Bible. It'd be great. And this week, Jesus really starts teaching us about leading others and about the fruits that we are bearing. So he's really asking. First off, he starts asking, can the blind lead the blind? Um, and really, what he's talking about here is that a blind person can't lead another blind person, and he's talking about in the spiritual sense, where if we're spiritually blind, if we are not looking to Jesus as our light, then we're just walking around, groping around in the dark, and we won't be able to see the dangers. He specifically talked about falling into a pit. If we are leading someone who is in the dark and we're in the dark, then we're not going anywhere fast. We're going to probably fall into many pitfalls or into other dangers. And what Jesus is saying here is that like we need to trust in him. We need to trust in him as a teacher. Jesus is our light. And then he goes on to speak about what I hear a lot too is about why do you see the speck in your neighbor's eye but do not notice the log in your own eye? And he's telling us to remove the log in our own eyes first. Calling us hypocrites if we're doing that. So like if we are struggling with the sin, really deeply struggling with the sin, and we are not working in any way to remove that from life, we are not going to the sacrament of reconciliation and receiving the Eucharist, turning to Jesus, asking him for his grace to have that sin out of our life and working earnestly towards removing that sin from our life. And we are going to turn to that another person who is struggling with that same sin and maybe in a lesser level, and we are telling them to remove that sin from their life, but we are not working hard to remove that sin from our life, then we are being hypocrites. We're all going to be sinners. We all struggle with sin, and this is why we have the sacrament of reconciliation to constantly have recourse to. But when we look at others and we're like, you're doing that sin, that's bad, but we are living out that sin, and we are not trying to get over that sin, we have no authority there to say anything. We have no reason to be trying to help that person. But if we have removed that sin from life or are earnestly working on removing that sin and we are trusting in the Lord and we see someone else struggling with that same sin or a different sin, we can go to that person. We can encourage them in overcoming that sin. And this is how we help others remove the speck from their eyes, is when we remove the log from our own eyes, the log of sin in our life, and we earnestly try our very best with the grace of God to not sin and always have that coming back to the sacrament of confession. And we are able to encourage people in our lives who are also struggling with sin to know, I'll let them know that they can overcome it, that they can work hard and learn to overcome that sin. And we can be an encouraging presence for them instead of just being a hypocrite by being like, oh, you're doing that sin, that's bad. But they look at our lives and we're doing the exact same thing. That's not going to have any transformative moments. If anything, it might drive people away from the faith. But if we're saying like, yeah, no, I struggle with that, and this is how I work through that, and you do it out of charity, you do that out of love, and you share your experience out of love for that person, that can have many, many fruits. And really, this is the next part. Jesus talks about the fruits. So he talks about how a good tree has good fruits, a bad tree has bad fruits. Um, I garden a lot, and every year for the past few years, I've had pumpkins. And very early on in the season, probably about May, June, I can tell right from the way the vines are growing what sort of crop I'm going to get in the fall. Some years I look at it, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna maybe get 1 or 2 pumpkins, and they're gonna be small, and they're not gonna be good for much. They might be good maybe for pies, but like they're not gonna be really good for much, not even pies. But then there's other years where I'll look at it and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna be getting a very strong crop this year. I'm gonna have large pumpkins. They're gonna be good pumpkins. They're gonna be healthy pumpkins. Pumpkins that I'm gonna probably take seeds from for the next year. And generally, I'm able to figure that out early on because I can look at the plant and I can see the good plants and the bad plants, and if and sometimes I'll rip out the bad plants so they don't take away the soil from the good plants. Um, but here Jesus is talking about bad plants don't grow good fruit, and he's talking about our lives. Um, if we are rotten on the inside, we're not gonna be bearing good fruit. But if we are trusting in the Lord, if we are continually trusting the Lord, we are gonna bear good fruit because we are planted in the Lord. And finally, he turns specifically to the heart. When he talks about the good treasure and the bad treasures in our heart. So if we have good treasures in our heart, we're going to produce good. If we have evil treasures, we're going to produce evil. And this is another one of our calls, is to make sure that we have a good heart. Because when we don't have a good heart, when our heart is focused on evil things, then we're really going to primarily produce evil. We might produce good unintentionally, but mostly we're going to be producing evil. But if we are rooted in treasures that are good, if our heart is rooted in Christ, then we will produce really good treasures, and that will be lived out in our lives. So this whole gospel, it's so much to be unpacked, and really I encourage you to go back and read it. Read it for yourself. It's Luke chapter 6, verses 39 to 45. Take some time this week, read the gospel, reflect on it. And sort of like what St. Francis did. When St. Francis heard the gospel about giving up everything for the poor, he went and did it. So that's a message that he heard God speak to him in his heart, this word of action. So look at the gospel for this Sunday. Look at it and see where God is speaking a word of action into your heart this week. Whatever part speaks to you the most, and look at that word of action. Maybe it's a call to go back to confession. Maybe it's a call to encourage someone who's struggling with a sin in their life, to encourage that person that they can overcome it. Or maybe it's a call to trust in the Lord more. But whatever that call of action is, I can't speak to it for you, because that's going to be your personal revelation from God. But whatever that call to action is, actually act it out. Don't just be like, yeah, I think God's calling me to do that, and then go on with your life. Do it. It might seem hard, but when we trust in the Lord and just do it, we're really gonna live things out in an extremely beautiful and good way. St. Joan of Arc, one of the quotes I have, and I think is in any email I send, it's act and God will act. So when we act, God will act in our lives. So when we hear that word of action, act and God will act in your life. So I encourage you to read the gospel always, and just really reflect on where God is calling you to act in this week. Know that I am praying for you. Please pray for me. And until we see each other again, I want to wish you a happy week. God bless. And yeah, bye.